big finish to season 1 of the pod. Gentlemen? What's going on, folks? Welcome to Got Your Back, NHL edition. Yes, season finale edition. The gentlemen have headed out to their respective cottages, and after this podcast, they will be putting their phones away. Understandably, it's been a grind. We've had a blast here on season 1, but let's finish it off today. Mike Johnson, Pierre LeBrun are standing by. Reminder, the Got Your Back NHL edition brought to you by Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals, our title sponsor for Season 1. They provide equipment and supplies to all facets of the Canadian construction industry, and they've got that get-her-done attitude. They don't mess around. They live by it. They make sure they will never let their clients down. No excuses. They take great pride in that attitude. Cross Country Canada, our proud title sponsors here on Got Your Back, LeBrun and Rashad. And MJ. Look at the smile. Well, look at the smile on MJ. I think he was maybe up a little bit earlier than P, but you guys are at the cottages, ready to relax. Just a whole different gear you're going to shift into, P.
Yeah, one more column to write for The Athletic today, and then I am disappearing for the summer.
Yeah, and you, like Johnny, he pulls a full Houdini. Like, there's no sort of Pierre happening in the summertime. And I'm not saying you didn't earn it, Pierre. You've earned it. But, man, you know how to just go off-grid, my man. Do you even have power out there?
Oh, yeah. No. This is not... I don't rough it. That's not me. I would not be the guy you'd want to have in a survival outdoors game. I'd be the first guy tapping out. Oh, I just got bit by a fly. I'm out. Got to go home. See you later.
Yes. I've been to Pierre's place. It is lovely. And actually, to be fair, we're not far from each other. Pierre and I are probably only like a 30-minute drive from each other. So we're in the same neck of the woods. No pun intended. Yeah, it's been a good year. It's been a fun year, but it'll be nice to take a couple of weeks, couple of months here to refresh. And then before you know it, we'll be right back at it in September. But and I always feel, Shoggy, you are sort of a hybrid between Pierre and I on free agent day, where you're both a bit of an insider, but a bit of an analyst and a bit of a reporter. So you're doing a bit of everything. But Pierre worked so hard into yesterday. And whereas I just kind of sit there, I don't have to do anything. Like, here comes the signing. I talk about what I think about it. It's very easy for me. The insider guys, Pierre specifically, they work so hard. So yeah, they definitely need to recharge the batteries a little bit.
Can you put into perspective, Pierre? Put into perspective, you and that phone. I mean, I followed you around at the draft for a week, so I saw it. I know what it looks like. But the relationship you have with your phone over the last week and a half, it's bizarre, it's weird, it's not healthy. It's just it's crazy the way you guys stare at it.
Yeah, I might throw it in the lake actually at the end of this, but no, I mean, that's the job, right? And I also probably will spend some of today and tomorrow going back and texting a lot of people to say sorry for how many times I texted them over the last couple of weeks. But it's crazy, and I don't remember this being quite as crazy pre-cap. I mean, I covered the league for a decade before the salary cap. But I tell you what, in the salary cap era, the month of June has become like else. I mean, amount of activity both for hires and fires and trades and signings, it's unreal. And the cap has forced that, of course, in terms of the player movement. But it's been a busy couple of weeks.
All right, well, tons to break down, guys. We're going to go around the horn with the Canadian teams, and then we're going to talk about other teams that made a splash in free agency. Let's get to the breakdown brought to you by our good friends at Kuma Outdoor Gear. A wide range of fantastic outdoor gear if you happen to be someone that likes tailgating in football season or just spending some time outside at the cottage or at the campsite. A wide range of drinkware, super comfortable outdoor seats as well. They got their new switchback heated chair that's powered by Bluetooth technology. A couple of heaters in that thing, so that's fantastic as well. They've been great partners this year on the podcast, so we want to say thanks to Matt and the great crew over at Kuma Outdoor Gear. Gentlemen, we'll just go alphabetical because it's easiest. Let's talk about the Canadian teams, what they did and what they did not do. We will start with the Calgary Flames. And listen, we all know, Johnny, that Craig Conroy's to-do list is a big one in the offseason. But man, just no activity. I'm not sure if it was just too much on the to-do list when it comes to guys that he needs to either get signed or get traded, but there was nary a peep from the Calgary Flames on July 1st, buddy.
You said Calgary. I'm like, hang on. What did Calgary do again? I'm trying to check my notes. I don't remember them doing anything. So, I think there's two trains of thought here for Calgary. One, of course, is what are we going to do with the guys that are signed but may not want to re-sign? Lindholm, Backlund, Hanifin. What's going to happen to those guys? Whatever we do with them will dictate what else we will do with our roster. And we may get a whole bunch of players back for those guys so that we don't need to go sign players right now. So there's that. And the other idea, Pierre, I think, is that I think they want to give the team that didn't have a great year last year, if they can, another chance. I don't think they feel they need to make a ton of changes. More new coach, new management. Let's let that same group try again. So maybe not surprising because their big work will be done with the trades, if there are any.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think you can't go out and sign a bunch of players and then suddenly get players back for some of these guys that you're going to trade and have too many guys. It's all math. I mean, it's a salary cap. So they really have to focus on the decisions they have to make, in particular on Noah Hanifin. Hope they can sign Lindholm. If not, make a decision there. Figure out what to do with a really important leader in Michael Backlund. They don't have to trade every player that has an expiring deal. Some of them, I think, will be allowed to come back and start the year, and then they can make a decision there, either in terms of still signing them during the year or trading them at the deadline, right? So that's why I think it was probably prudent that they took the approach they did yesterday in terms of the decisions they still have, either signing-wise or trade-wise, with the guys they have right now.
When Craig Conroy took the job, he talked about not letting guys walk into their final year on the deal. What happened with Johnny Gaudreau, not wanting to let that happen again. Then everybody looked at his team and went, you got a bunch of them. Little easier said than done, Johnny. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't want to say overpromise, but he was pretty clear that they didn't want to have that repeat itself. But if the trade market isn't that great and the market's a little wonky, pretty hard for him to deliver on that.
Yeah, but he does have 2 more months, right? And everyone talks about the draft. They talk about free agency as deadlines, but he does have 2 more months that he wants to, if he doesn't want to let them walk in. And, that might be his preference. But I think maybe the greater takeaway is I won't let that guy go through the trade deadline.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think it's as much about that he'll take his time and he won't let them walk for nothing if they're going to leave for nothing.
Yeah, I agree with MJ. One of the things that I won't say annoys me, but I think is overhyped is the winners and losers of July 1st. It's one day. The off season is long. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk got traded, I think, on July 22nd last year. I actually think this is going to be one of those off seasons where there's going to be still a lot of news between now and training camp, not just from Calgary, but all over the league. So I don't think you can sit here today and say, well, what's going on with Calgary? Well, we don't have the answer yet. There's still decisions to be made there. And so, when we reconvene in September for our first podcast of the season, I think we'll be able to answer that question a lot better. But to MJ's point, the trade deadline is another safety valve for this organization, and part of that, I'll be honest, I'm not sure I see them as a playoff team right now. I don't see them as a bad team either, but I think they're a bubble team. I think it'll be easier for them if they don't trade some of these guys this summer to say, yeah, we better do that at the trade deadline, in my opinion.
Okay, moving on to the Edmonton Oilers. The target was Connor Brown. They land Connor Brown. Maybe Zach Hyman light. They swap out Kyler Yamamoto for Connor Brown. I think that makes them better. What do you think? How much did they improve at that position?
I really like Connor Brown. I can tell you the Capitals as an organization were so upset when he got hurt last year because they really were excited to see what he could bring to their team, and they felt that was a massive loss. I think he's a guy that I get that it was for cap reasons, but he's a guy that the Leafs should have never traded, to be honest, Connor Brown. He's one of those glue guys that I thought was important for Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. They should have kept Connor Brown around. So, I think Oilers fans will have to give Connor Brown a bit of, a bit of a break early next season. I think it takes a lot to come back from missing the entire year, but eventually, I think Zach Hyman Light is a beautiful way to put it in terms of all the little things that Connor Brown does that makes him popular with his teammates.
I mean, even if it takes him a little while to get fully up and running, he's such a smart player, can help in a lot of different ways. The fact that he's reliable defensively will help the top lines that he plays with, whether it's Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. He has scored big in junior, in the minors. He scored 20 in the NHL. But, you're very much more comfortable with what he's going to give you night in, night out. And if he plays with those guys, if he's not in the power play, but he plays in the top six, he'll get 20 goals and he'll get 50 points, and he'll be more reliable, more consistent, more capable in the playoffs here. I think it's a good fit on a bonus-laden contract that fits this year. Will cost them a little bit more next year, but they'll worry about that next year.
Well, next year the cap goes up, as everyone knows. And, he's a guy that I thought the Chiefs were wrong to get rid of. I know the salary cap was a big part of it, but they should have kept him around. He's one of those glue guys that I think was good for Matthews and Marner. I think a young Ottawa team should have found a way to keep him. And I get it. It takes two to tango, and you have to have a guy that's willing to sign. But this guy has to stop moving around. He's such a popular teammate wherever he goes. He does all the little things well. He doesn't cheat the game. He'll get you 15 to 20. I think Oilers fans will have to be patient with him early on. I think it takes a lot for a guy to come back after a year off, but I think it's an excellent signing.
Yeah, and as we talked about before, like the blue line, I think that there's an upgrade needed at playoff time. I mean, I think we know that the Oilers blue line as it currently exists might not get them over the hump to a Stanley Cup, Johnny, but it was a real targeted move this year with Matthias Ekholm. Just the perfect player at the perfect time. And I know Oilers fans probably wanted more improvement on the blue line. That's just so hard to do this far out. You don't know exactly what you need just yet. So a targeted move and some patience, I think, is smart here from Ken Holland.
It is, because you also remember, just action doesn't mean improvement. Mm-hmm. They can go sign guys, but unless they're going to be better, why do you want to add more salary, more bodies, more commitments when, you have a good team. They need money to sign Evan Bouchard. I've been screaming for someone to offer sheet Evan Bouchard for 2 weeks now.
I heard you saying that, yeah. I'm sure the Oilers were swearing at their TV as well.
Well, listen, Ken Holland talked about it out loud, so It's not like he's not aware of it. But so they need that money to get him done, and then they can figure out what else is happening depending on how it looks at the deadline. I think this is probably a wise move. When they traded away Kostin and Yamamoto, they had to prioritize a forward, and they got one, and a good one, who's better than his contract probably dictates for this upcoming year. So, patience. It's not a finished product. They're going to be good enough to be good. They may be not good enough to win it all, but they'll get there. They'll try to get there.
Yeah. And one of the things that I sometimes think of is that sometimes the teams that are quiet on July 1st are the teams, you think about Tampa, New Jersey, Edmonton. You know what those teams have in common? They're already pretty good. Mm-hmm. And so, July 1st is not an optimal time to fix your team. You can tweak, you can add some elements for sure, and we'll talk about that here. It's not the day ever to fix your actual team at the heart of it, because you're overpaying and you're in scramble mode and your hair's on fire. The fact that the Oilers were quiet, like the Devils were quiet, Tampa Bay was quiet, guess what? Those teams are all competing for the Cup next year.
Yeah. Not a lot to say about the Montreal Canadiens day, Pierre. Nothing really major. Sean Monahan gets done to return on a 1-year, $1.99 million deal. That was a little bit earlier on, kind of nibbling around the edges. What did you make of how quiet things were?
Yeah, they traded Joel Edmondson and had to retain half, so it wasn't an ideal trade. I mean, they would have liked for someone to pick them up in full, but what it did is it opened a roster spot because they've got so many young defensemen now. They have a bit of a glut of young D, which is a good thing to have when you're a team that's rebuilding. So that was important from that perspective. The other thing is, they'll need a bit of money to re-sign Newhook, who they just acquired. The Arpin Basu wrote about this today in The Athletic, and I thought it was a very important point that he made. If the Habs can move a little more money, if they can find someone to take Mike Hoffman, even if the Habs have to retain half, like they just did with Edmondson, it would be a lot more ideal for Montreal to have Carey Price actually on their roster on opening night than putting him on off-season LTIR. And I don't want to get into all the bottom line is summer LTIR is not as good for you as being able to wait until the day after opening night in terms of your flexibility and being able to do different things. So that's the big offseason thing, to be honest, with Montreal, is how they handle the Carey Price contract.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to go down that avenue because it's complex. But yeah, like that is something. If you're going to put guys on LTIR long term, you'd like to be able to have their full contract on the books before you put them on LTIR. So even if you want to add money, say we're going to add your money on the second day of the season, because then we can sink the full $10 million and get the full $10 million credit from Carey Price. But that's another story. The one thing I am surprised about, Chuggy, maybe you, like Joel Edmonton at half, 1 year at 175. I'm surprised. I don't know what they wanted back for him. Maybe they just wanted picks. I'm surprised they didn't get more on Joel Edmonton at 1.7. It feels like that could have been more.
Health issues, Pierre. By the way, Pierre, if you can just, I think your mic's rubbing a little bit on your collar there, buddy. So if you can just maybe nudge it away from the nudge it away from your collar.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Is it an injury issue with Edmonton, though, I guess is the question.
Yeah, he had a tough year with the back, and remember at the trade deadline, he basically became untradeable because I think he ended up playing literally the night before the trade deadline to show everyone that he was healthy again. But I think the back, even though he's healthy again by all accounts, I think it made teams nervous and it hurt his trade value.
Okay, we'll speed up a little bit here. The Ottawa Senators, Korpisalo on the 5-year deal. They locked up some RFAs, and DeBrinket's still hanging around out there. MJ, is Korpisalo at 5 times 4 reasonable? And what do you think of that?
Salary reasonable. I'm always hesitant to give goalies with health issues or performance fluctuations tons of term, but that's what it was going to take to get him. I do believe that he fixed his hips last summer. That's a big part of the reason why he bounced back and had a really good year both in Columbus and a really strong year in LA. If you were going to bet on it, one of those guys that you didn't have to trade for, I feel just about, other than Freddie Anderson, I might have picked him over Korpisalo. He probably would have been the guy who would have picked, Pierre. I think they cannot miss on this guy. Like, he has to be good, but I think he's got a really good chance to be good for them.
Yeah, and I think, if you're Ottawa, Korpisalo went to LA and suddenly had a lot of pressure on him, maybe the most pressure he's ever had in his career, right? The Kings were a playoff team. They needed help, and he responded well. And to me, that's a great sort of, sales pitch if you're Korpisalo that you can handle that. So I'm with you, Term. I mean, Tristan Jarry contract in Pittsburgh makes me a little nervous, to be quite honest, because of his health issues. I'm actually quite surprised that Kyle Dubas, in a way, did that, but it's telling it happened late in the day after free agency opened. There were a few things going on there with Pittsburgh, and one of them, by the way, is I think the Penguins had talked to Freddie Anderson's camp before Freddie Anderson went back to Carolina. And I know we're supposed to talk about Ottawa, but it's all tied into each other. The goal carousel was fascinating yet again. Because it couldn't wilder than it ended up being. Anderson legitimately went to market. And there were a few conversations, and then he ends up back in Carolina. I believe Semyon Varlamov briefly went to market and may have spoken to Carolina, but ends up back with Lou Lamoriello. There were a lot of things going on within a span of about an hour and a half that could have drastically actually changed the goalie landscape more than it actually did. So that was interesting yesterday.
All right, guys, want to remind you that Liberty Smart Security is a great spot to go if you're looking to increase just how your level of safety, how you're feeling in your home or in your office. They've got high-quality advanced smart security systems for your home and your office and help you protect the things that you value most in your life. Your home is your castle, so is your business. So protect it with Liberty Smart Security. We're going to continue rolling right along here. The Toronto Maple Leafs. Ryan Reeves, boy, that contract's getting a lot of play on social media and Twitter and such when Twitter's working. Johnny, what do you think? Ryan Reeves, the 3 years, people, his age definitely raises the eyebrow a little bit. Did they need Ryan Reeves?
That's the question, and you phrase it so well. I can't angle my way out of it.
I know.
So
I'm putting you right on the spot.
The age thing for him doesn't really matter as much because what he's the best in the world at, I don't think is not going to be the case in 2 or 3 years. Foot speed is not his strength, and that's not going to be his strength as he gets older. I think, do they need a tough guy? Well, they've had Matt Martin Kyle Clifford, Wayne Simmons. And I'm not suggesting any of them are as tough as Ryan Reeves, but they've had some version of that guy around. And it hasn't necessarily done whatever they hoped it would do. But I think for Ryan Reeves, is as much as, whether he can be intimidating or keep the flies off, which I personally do not believe one bit, he does add, and you saw him when he talked to James yesterday, like he is full of personality and juice and noise and volume. And I think that, as much as anything, is something the Toronto Maple Leafs management group was interested in, Pierre. Like having a guy who adds a different dynamic to the room in as much as he adds something to what they do on the ice. So, it's 1-3, it's too long. You could think it for basically $300,000 if it didn't work out. But I think it's more a statement on his personality being the driving force of whatever impact he's going to have, as opposed to whatever he does on the ice.
Yeah, first of all, I think that's going to be a 2-year deal, not a 3-year deal. And I won't get into it, but I suspect the way they structured the deal, I mean, there's a way to get out of it in year 3 through different mechanisms anyway. But I think you touched on the important part here. First of all, way too much was made of it either way, whether you're for it or against it. I think people need to calm down in Leafland. But he has a personality that brings people into the group. For people that have played with him, he has such a vibrant personality, and he has the right kind of loud. And I think if there was for example, if Ryan O'Reilly or Luke Shenever came on here and had truth serum, and they would, I'm sure, not even say this on or off the record, but I bet you if we forced them, they would say it was an eye opener for them to go in that league room last year and realize how quiet that room was. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big part of this signing here. Is Matt Martin was really good at that when he was in Toronto, especially because Matthews and Martin were so young then. But that personality in the room that reminds everyone that there's no hiding, that everyone's accountable. I think Ryan Reeves will be good at that. The rest, I mean, people are, people are exaggerating their reactions here to what it truly means on the ice. Like, come on, he's a bottom 6 guy. He's going to do what he does. But to me, it's more about what he brings up the ice for this team.
And so, there might not be the biggest on-ice reaction to Ryan Reeves, but it's not like the Leafs don't have more work to do, because the bigger question on ice is all the guys they lost that they did not replace. And I probably won't get them all, between Hall and Shen and Achari and O'Reilly and Bunting. Am I missing anyone? Like, they lost a whole bunch of guys with a whole bunch of goals and a whole bunch of production, and they didn't really replace them. Ryan O'Reilly's in there. I think I got him. So there is more work for Toronto to do. And they have to sort out their goaltending situation, which is muddy with Matt Murray there. So while they weren't the busiest on July 1st, I don't think, Pierre, by any stretch, they're done, because they got a lot to do.
No, and they really, really tried hard to sign Ryan O'Reilly. I mean, this was not about money. I mean, the Leafs could have easily matched what Nashville did. So read into that what you will, that Ryan O'Reilly left.
What does that say? That Ryan O'Reilly chose Nashville over Toronto. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah. But this is the issue. This is why Brad Treliving, rather publicly in Nashville, and even he wanted the Nylander situation in particular, wrapped up before yesterday, and it didn't happen. And the difficulty for the Leafs is that I think they have an idea where the Matthews deal will probably end up this summer at some point, so that one's not as urgent. But you can't go out and do a million things until you know what happens with Nylander, because that's a major cog. It's a major cog on the ice in terms of one of the most talented players, and it's a major cog on the cap. And this is what Treliving was trying to say when he was at the media. I think it was on Tuesday in Nashville, is that there's an urgency to figuring out that situation so that he knows what else he needs to do around the roster. And I think there's clearly a lot of frustration with how that negotiation now has played out, because, I get it. People will say, well, just trade him if he doesn't want to play ball with you on the kind of extension you want to sign him to. Okay. are you getting decent value back for William Nylander? Do you know of a lot of teams that have cap room that can give William Nylander, what he feels he should get paid? And by the way, again, he should get paid. He's a very good player. But we've just seen an offseason where Taylor Hall and Ryan Johansson and Kevin Hayes all get traded for nothing. At least they're in a pickle here. The way better path is getting Nylander to a deal you can live with and keep him. That's the best path. The divorce path, while also understandable, and it may end up going that way this summer, you don't know how you're placing his offense, and you don't know how many teams are really in a position where they could Nylander themselves. So it's a tough thing, and it's affecting the Leafs' ability to do other things right now.
Man, the general managers who've taken over in a couple of spots here between Conroy in Calgary and Treliving in Toronto, like any one of these moves that they have to try and negotiate would be difficult in an off season, but there are just big things that need to get done, and huge franchise shifting players where deals need to get done, and the market is gummed up, and it's definitely making things difficult. To Vancouver, Johnny, Carson Soucy, 3 times 3.25, Teddy Bluger, Ian Cole. How much better do you think the Vancouver Canucks are?
Their penalty kill would be better.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's part of it. They had the worst penalty kill in the league last year. Teddy Bluger, I think somebody said in the last 3 years, he's got the second best goals against per 60 rate amongst forwards while shorthanded. So he's a great penalty killer. Cole and Soucy will do those things. Soucy had a fantastic playoff. So, you're buying high on him as he gets a bit of term. I'm not sure who's going to play with who, where Ian Cole's third pair, Soucy's second pair. You have Myers, you got Fronek. I don't know how they're going to shuffle themselves out. They're solid NHLers. If you're going to ask Carson Soucy or Ian Cole to play in Vancouver in your top 4 all year long, that might be stretching how long they could be at their very, very best. It might be at the outer limits of how much they could play there. But they will be better, Pierre. I mean, they're going to be better defensively, which is part of what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and this front office also listening to their coach. I think there's some Rick Talkisms in these signings. I think, and you look at the way the team reacted to Rick Tocchet behind the bench. Is that something that goes into next year? Listen, Vancouver. Step back for a minute and go 10,000 feet. Vancouver is still a fascinating thing to me because I don't think ownership there has ever allowed, I don't know if he will ever allow, what probably should have happened, which is a full rebuild. And because of that, the margins are so difficult for Patrick Allvin and the rest of that front office to navigate being competitive.
Looks like we might have lost Pierre there, Johnny.
Cottage catcher. Everyone's on their phone.
Yeah. Oh, there he is. He popped back in. Came back around there. I'll make an edit there. Okay.
He dropped out there for a second, Pierre, but
yeah. I'm going to have lots of work to do in post-production here, fellas.
Yeah. We know what you're doing today.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Lastly, we go to the Winnipeg Jets, who we just talked about general managers that have a ton of work to get done, and Kevin Cheveldayoff is certainly right at the top of that list. Return Laurent Brossoit to the organization. Of all the players in the playoffs that took injuries, man, I felt bad for Laurent Brossoit. As the way he had found his game and then to get hurt at that time, definitely difficult. But he goes back to Winnipeg. Johnny, it just seems to me like there's so much to get done. Trying to sort out how to improve yourself in free agency, the list was too long.
Free agency wasn't the play for them. Similar to Calgary, right? They have these great players that may get dealt that will return other NHLers. They don't want draft picks. The draft just happened. They're going to try to get other players. So when Hellebuck goes, whenever that is, they're gonna be looking for players. So Nemestik's a serviceable guy, but again, it's a trade summer for Winnipeg, not a signing summer.
Yeah, and they got a really strong return for Pierre-Luc Dubois too. Let's not forget in Nashville at the draft in that blockbuster. thinking of Laurent Brossoit, you want to think about how your fate could have changed. On your point, Ryan, if he never gets hurt and he's the one who wins the cup, and I want to be careful here. I'm not taking anything away from the way Adin Hill played under pressure. He was cool as a cucumber, did the job. But behind that blue line in Vegas, I think Laurent Brossoit also wins a cup if he stays healthy. I really, truly believe that. And if that's the case, are the roles completely reversed in the last 7 days between the Adin Hill contract and the Laurent Brossoit contract? I don't know. I always think it's funny to think of those things.
All right, that wraps up the Canadian teams. I asked you guys to maybe pick a team or two that also stood out to you in one way or another. Pierre, we can start with you. You know, when you evaluate the day outside of the Canadian teams, what kind of resonated with you?
Well, before we joined here today, I was on the phone with Barry Trotz, and he was really walking me through, now that it's all happened, his game plan entering the offseason. And I think Barry Trotz surprised a lot of people. And there was such a culture play for him in terms of resetting that Nashville Predators franchise. And listen, Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene are awesome dudes and good hockey players, but this is just more about the Predators kept doing the same thing and the same thing and the same thing, and it was time for a reset. And boy, if you listen to Barry Trotz talk about why he signed Ryan O'Reilly and Luke Schenn, you understand what Barry Trotz is trying to do there in Nashville. And you know, they're not going to be a great team. They're a team in transition, but he's got a lot of young players coming, and he wants people like Luke Schenn and Ryan O'Reilly around those young players. And so that was certainly a big part of yesterday for me. The other one is Carolina, because the Hurricanes are one of the most fascinating teams in NHL every year. Last year they trade for Brent Burns, and right now as we speak, they're trying to trade for Erik Karlsson. They may or may not be able to pull it off, but they're trying to trade for Erik Karlsson. They signed Orlov. They signed Bunting. The Tony DeAngelo trade, according to Don Waddell, is still going to happen, probably around July 9th with Philly. They are a fascinating team that keeps knocking at the door, trying to break through, and they're not afraid to make moves. They're almost like Vegas East in many ways in their courage to make big moves.
How many right shot defensemen they need? Burns, DeAngelo, Karlsson. They got Pesci and Shea on their expiring deals this year, which tells you where those guys are coming. You also have the two goalies. They're going to go with a three-headed goalie monster when they re-signed Ranta and Anderson, which is surprising to me, Pierre.
Well, because I always mispronounce his name. The young Russian netminder does not. He does not require waivers for one more year, Mike. So they're able to send him down at will. And let's be honest, I think there's also a track record of both Anderson and Ranta getting hurt. Mm-hmm. So they used all three goalies last year, and I think they believe they will need to use all three goalies again next year. So that part doesn't surprise me. You're right about all the right-handed shot D. That's interesting. And I think if they are able to land Erik Karlsson, which again may or may not happen, but if they do get him, I suspect there's a chance they trade Brett Pesci, given their inability to extend him so far in those negotiations.
Who stood out for you, Johnny?
Who didn't Detroit sign? I mean, like, it's amazing the volume of work that they did. And Steve Yzerman, obviously, last summer it felt like, okay, we're not building anymore. We're trying to be good, but I'm going to just take my look. So JT Compher gets a big deal. He's kind of like Andrew Kopp. Like, he's a good defensive centerman, two-way guy. Not a great offensive guy, but a solid guy to add to the mix. They trade for Costin. They buy out Yamamoto. They sign Christian Fisher. Daniel Sprong is going to score 20 in his sleep somewhere. Now it's going to be in Detroit. Shane Gostisbehere, Justin Hall, James Reimer, Alex Lyons. Like, I know it's a lot of nibbling, but enough nibbles is a full meal. Like, that's like, 7-8 guys on your roster you just signed yesterday. I don't even know how they all fit together. Derek Lalonde's going to have to do some creative whiteboard work to try to get those guys organized. But if July 1's not generally the day to build your team, Steve Yzerman spent July 1 reshaping the outer edges of his team entirely yesterday, which is fascinating.
Well, don't forget, he also signed Kostin after acquiring him from Edmonton. Oh, and he had time to buy out promoted by the Oilers. It was a busy week for Steve Yzerman. And I tell you, credit to the agent, Kevin Magnuson, who's the agent for JT Compher. Because of how tight the market is and how little money there was, I knew they wanted $5 million plus a year, which is why Colorado couldn't re-sign him. I didn't think it was out there, so I was wrong on that one. It's good to point out when you're wrong, which happens a lot for me. But I just didn't think someone was going to spend $5 million plus on JT Compher. I get it, career year last year, 52 points, but to me, he's really a third line center, not a second line center. He ended up getting opportunities because of injuries and Nazem Kadri's exit from Colorado. Good for him. Solid player for sure. Don't know if he's a $5 million player, so we'll see.
Yeah. What about the term given out by the New York Islanders fellas? It was like all of a sudden they were just like, you get a contract and you get 7 years and you get 8 years. And I didn't see that one coming from that GM.
Right as we were going off air, it dropped right at 5 o'clock. We were just leaving the studio and we're like, okay, Sorokin is his own situation.
Yeah.
So he's one of the best goalies in the world. It's a long-term contract, scary, but that's kind of appropriate money for one of those guys. He's one of the very few guys you probably could convince yourself as a goalie is worth that. Fair enough. Scott Mayfield for 7, even on a low cap hit. I guess they're just basically just averaging the cap hits down by giving out tons of term. So Scott Mayfield, it was $3 and something million for 7 years.
3.5.
Pierre Engvall, $3 million for 7 years. It's just so long to commit to guys that are not upper echelon players, solid players, but not upper echelon players. And then Varlamov, he's like going to be 40 years old on a 4-year deal. Like it seems like it's just too long. I get what he's trying to do, keep the AAV down by giving extra years, but it's stunning. But Lou Lamoriello has always done it his own way. He doesn't really care what people might say about what he does, but Pierre, it seems like an awful long time to commit to guys who are good, but not great.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't group them all together. I think you have to look at each deal separately. The Sorokin deal, I think, is excellent. Even if the 7th and 8th years scare you, he's a top 3 goalie in the world, and you just got him for less money than Vasilevsky. Bob's your uncle, man. I sign on that any day. He's still in his 20s. That was an excellent signing. I'm okay with Field. I don't think it's a great signing, but I'm fine with it because he's a dependable player that you get for $3.5 million a year. You know what? A lot of defensemen making 5 were the same guy as him.
And you could be a third pair guy, right, Pierre? Now, if you make $3 million going forward, that could be a third pair guy. It's not going to be fair enough.
So that one's okay. The Engvall one is a head scratcher for me because I think that if you'd sign him at 2 years at $3 million, you could get him again at $3 million in the third year. Like the term on Engvall that one didn't compute for me. And then finally Varlamov, 4 years is too long on a veteran goalie, but he had other interest. I hinted at it earlier today. He did dip his toes. You're allowed to do that despite playing on a Lou Lamoriello team. He was UFA and he did have some leverage. The AAV at 275 is nice. I don't think he plays out that deal. So again, what are the options at the end there when perhaps you're making this a 3-year deal, not a 4-year deal? We'll see how that plays out.
All right. That was a solid little roundup, fellas. We're grinding our way through some Wi-Fi issues at the Cottage, but I think we got her done. We can't let the season end without one final red card, yellow card, no card. I mean, we can't. It's our signature game, sweeping the nation. And this is just a real subtle one. I heard this story while I was at the draft, had a conversation with a couple of other fellas about it, and I decided I needed to bring it to the podcast, guys. So this is simple scenario.
Oh, boy.
You're at dinner. It's 3 guys out for dinner, all out, on a work trip. You're at a reasonably nice restaurant, right? Pretty decent. Yeah, we'll put it in like the 4-star range, something like that. They take their food reasonably seriously. 3 of you fellas at the table, and the server's taking orders. And everybody's sitting there ordering. Gets to the 3rd guy, a little bit indecisive. So his comment to the server is, "What is the chef feeling excited about today?" Yeah. Yeah, that's the comment. What is the chef feeling excited about today? Now, you guys are going to know where I stand on this because I'm bringing it up. I mean, I will never let that go. That would be something that I would use for the rest of my life with this person to be all over him for. So this is a red card all day long for me. Pierre, you're more of a foodie than I am. MJ, I'm not sure where you're going to come out on this, but guys, this is red card all day long. What is the chef excited about today? The only thing that would have made that worse is if he dropped the and said, what is chef excited about today?
What say you, Pierre?
I'm going to say red card. I totally agree because, first of all, it's almost like asking your server, what's good here on the menu. It doesn't matter. Everyone has different tastes. And so that shouldn't matter what sells more. You need a game plan when you go into a restaurant. I know when it's a fish night for me that I know what else is on the menu because I'm in the mood for fish. And then I'm focused when I get there. Like our last dinner in Nashville, Ryan, it was a fish night for me.
So good.
But no,
chef was excited about that fish that night.
He or she was excited. And again, it's like asking your server, what's good here? Well, what your server may enjoy may not be what you enjoy. So that actually, as much of a red card for me, is asking the server what's good on the menu.
Johnny?
You snotty. No, come on, guys. It's basically saying, what do you recommend? What is some dishes are so well known. Some dishes are very popular and frequently enjoyed. I'm giving no card. You're asking for a little guidance.
Wow.
Someone who is supposed to have the information that could give you some guidance. Not everyone knows it's fish night. Not everyone knows what the specialty is. Some people walk in. I don't have a game plan when I go to a restaurant.
Johnny,
the game plan is when I look at the menu and decide what I'm going to do.
But if you want more detail, just say, how's the fish? Or say, how's your Caesar salad? But the idea the chef is...
said, what do you recommend?
Well, that's different than saying, what's the chef excited about tonight?
It's another way of saying, what do you recommend?
The server's going to say, well, I tell you what, man. Favorite? He hasn't stopped talking about the tuna tartare since I came in. So I'd say he's really excited about the tuna tartare.
I'm pumped. You foodies, get out of here. No card.
Now, to be fair, MJ is labeling me correctly because when I go to a good restaurant, I'm enough of a nerd, I will tell you, where I will study the menu during the afternoon and have a game plan.
Yeah. See,
That's
not
me.
everyone's
That's
like
me.
that.
No
that
card.
Might be a red card.
Interesting.
That would be a red card.
2 reds and a no card.
Assignment. Oh, my goodness.
Well, guys, I think we're going to have to keep red card, yellow card, no card going in season 2 because, man, did we have some fun with that this year. Had tons of fun with you guys as well in season 1. Gentlemen, thank you for your contributions and great work. Enjoy a well-earned summer break and look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your rest.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for making this thing a reality, buddy.
Yeah, appreciate you bet, buddy. We had a ton of fun. And a huge thanks to our sponsors. You want to talk about making it a reality. Got to thank Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals. Just amazing title sponsors this season. Liberty Smart Security as well. Just fantastic partners and our good pals over at Kuma Outdoor Gear. Got to thank Pro Hockey Life as well. They were sponsors for the first half of the season, and big thanks to them as well. Enjoy your summer, folks. We'll still drop some podcasts. Got Your Back YEG with Strudwick and I. So if you want some Oiler content here and there through the summer, keep an eye on our feed. Otherwise, rest, relax, enjoy. Get yourself fired up. We'll be back in September for season 2. Cheers.